What is going on, guys, and welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be getting back to work on our little mini bike here. This bike has the stage 1.5 kit that I put together quite a few videos back, and we also threw a torque converter setup on here. This thing has been running great, and it actually rips pretty good for how stock it is. But the other day when we did our other mini bike video with my buddy Dylan's $50 mini bike, this thing started making a god-awful noise. I'm not sure what it is, but I'm sure if you guys have seen the thumbnail, you probably have a good idea of what it is. Now, this thing still runs, but it sounds god-awful. So we're gonna get this engine torn off here, brought over to the bench, and try to diagnose it and figure out what's going on with this thing. But we do have a spare engine on standby, just in case we need it. So let's get through the intro and jump right into today's video. Now that we've gotten through the intro, let's take a look at the engine that's on the bike. I'll show you guys what we've got going on with it. We'll have to get this thing off and then decide what we want to do moving forward with it. But as you can see, the engine is still on the bike. I did go ahead and take the torque converter cover and the belt off, but not sure if you guys are going to be able to hear this on camera. That's definitely play in the crank. That is not movement in the clutch assembly here. That is definitely crank movement. So the rod bearing's probably completely wiped. But we also have some up and down movement, quite a bit of it. And then there's also some in and out movement. It's not as pronounced as all the others, but it's definitely there. So we're gonna start off by getting this thing up in the air so it's a little easier to work on. Then we'll have to start taking the torque converter drive assembly off, get this engine off, and see if we're gonna end up running this or if we're gonna go ahead and swap out to this. So I do have an actual Honda GX200 engine over here on this trike build that we did a while back on the channel. And this thing does run pretty good, just needs some jetting for the carburetor. So depending on what's wrong with that thing, we might pull the Honda engine off and put our good parts onto that one and just slap it in there to get this thing going. So let's get to work on this thing and see what we can find. Before we go ahead and throw this thing up in the air, I want to see if I can get it to start for you guys so that you can hear the noise that I'm talking about. It sounds pretty bad. So I'm going to give it a pull, see if we can't get it to fire, and we'll set you guys up and see if you can hear it. Pretty bad. So let's go ahead and get this thing up in the air and we'll start diving into it. Now that we've got the bike up in the air, we can start working on getting this engine off here so we can tear it apart over on the bench. So we've done this a few times. It's going to be the same process. We're just going to pull the exhaust off and then pretty much try to take the engine off with the rest of the stuff. We'll have to disconnect the chain and then we'll take it over to the table and take off what we need and decide if we're going to try to fix this thing or just go with that Honda engine. So let's get this thing off here and see what actually went bad. We'll get the master link off of here so we can get the chain out of our way. I went ahead and disconnected the throttle cable, and then we also have a couple extra wires because I have a rectifier up here that we used to run our LED light. So we had to unplug that, undid the chain, the exhaust, I left the intake on, and pretty much everything else I left on unless we absolutely had to take it off. And we're gonna go ahead, pull this engine, set it up on the bench, and start diving into this thing. As you guys can see, I made my own riser plate when we did this the first time with the torque converter and everything. I just used some scrap steel we had, made a little engine riser for it, and it worked out pretty good. So we're going to leave that right on there. Hopefully our new engine will go right back in the right place so we don't have to mess with moving things around to line it up. But now that we got the engine off, let's take a look at it on the bench and see if we can't find out what's wrong with it. First thing I'm going to do is get our torque converter out of our way. Now I can show you guys that it wasn't in our torque converter. Our play is in our crankshaft, and it's not in this little spacer adapter we made either. It's definitely 100% in the crankshaft. I can see the crankshaft moving around when I do that, so I'm actually curious what happened here, if we broke the crank or what the deal is. But I'm gonna go ahead and keep this stuff separate because we should be able to use all of this on our other engine if we go that route. So we're gonna save all this stuff best we can. The only thing we might not need is we might not need this shaft collar adapter, because I believe the Honda might just be the right size right out of the box. So we'll go ahead and set this to the side, and we'll get this plate off, get the oil drained out of this thing, and start diving in. We'll get our intake off and right out of our way. Might as well take our fuel tank off while we're right here as well. Get that out of our way for now. Well, I'm glad that just pulled off here. Now when we were riding and this thing was hot, causing a fire or something crazy. But I'm going to go ahead and set this gas tank off to the side. I'm going to go ahead and take the carburetor and filter adapter off just to get it out of here for now. Alright, we've got the carburetor off for now. I'm just going to set this aside, keep it clean. Because this thing, honestly, this thing was running phenomenal. They always say it runs the best right before it blows up, and that's usually the case. But we've had this thing running pretty dang good for a while now, so I really don't want to mess with the jetting. So if we switch our parts over to that Honda engine, I'm probably just going to steal this carburetor for now. We aren't going to upgrade to a Mikuni or anything yet. The thing just doesn't need it right now. So we'll probably just keep this carburetor and put this one on the Honda since it was running so good. And I've had some issues with that Honda one, so I think that would be our best bet for now. But let's go ahead and keep tearing this thing down and see if we can't find our issue. I'm going to leave these studs for now. If we have to, we can steal them if we end up using that other engine. But let's go ahead and flip this guy around for a minute. I want to pull the spark plug out of it and just see what it looks like. And then we can pull the valve cover, see if anything looks weird on the valve train. And then we'll pull this side cover off, see what we find in the bottom end. Looks like it was a little fat, sooted up. But other than that, doesn't look like anything came up and smacked the plug. I don't even know how you would read one of these plugs, but we've had way too many runs on it to even know it's idled a lot and everything else. But it honestly doesn't look too bad. It's not like crazy sooted up. So we'll go ahead and set this aside. I'll probably use the same one on the Honda. Huh. I can see the flywheel in here doing this. So I'm kind of curious. Maybe we'll take that off real quick too. Let's go ahead and do that real quick. Let's take this off next. Alright, I'm going to go ahead and drain the oil out of this thing before I forget and then go to split the case and make a mess. So let's get that drained out. Oh yeah, there's lots of metal in it already. And it's dark. Probably should have changed it before I went beating the crap out of it the other day. I definitely think we got at least a bearing. There's all kinds of bearing material in there. I'm not sure how well you guys can pick it up though. If we were panning for gold, we'd be doing pretty good right now. Let's go ahead and take our magnetic dipstick out real quick. Definitely thinking the bottom end of this thing is smoked. We're still going to take it apart though, just to see how bad the damage is. See if we want to get parts for it still. But definitely think this one has expired. Now that we let the oil drain out of this thing for a while, I want to go ahead and pull this shroud. It looked like the flywheel might be moving, so I want to pull it off and see, and then we'll go ahead and pull the side cover and take a look inside the engine. Oh yeah, the flywheel's moving around a lot. That's something I just thought about. I don't know if we'll have lights if we put the Honda engine on it. That's gonna kind of suck. We might have to take both flywheels off and see what we're working with. That's weird. Almost feels like it literally broke the snout off, but all right, let's go ahead and flip this thing back around and we will take the side cover to the engine off, see what the inside of this thing looks like. Before we do that, let's go ahead and pull the valve cover off real quick. Valve lash is all tight, so we're good there. I'm gonna go ahead and back off on the valve lash and pull the push rods out real quick. Push rods look completely fine. Now that we got the valve train out of our way, we can go ahead and flip this thing to its side. I'm gonna get a block of wood so we can put it up like that to keep any oil from coming out when we open this cover. But we'll go ahead and get this thing opened up and see what we're working with. All right, let's finally pull this cover off and see what the damage is. Oh, I can't believe this thing was still running. Wait until you see this. We literally broke the crankshaft in half. How does that even happen? I did not think that's what we were going to find. I thought it was just going to be a blown apart main bearing. We straight snapped the crankshaft. I don't have a crankshaft for it on hand, so I guess we're going to be using that Honda. But I'll bring you guys in here in a second to take a closer look at this. I'm genuinely impressed with how we broke this one. Not sure how we did it, but we definitely did it. Since we're not going to be using this engine right now, I'm going to go ahead and pull the head off. We're probably going to steal our 18-pound valve springs. I don't plan on deleting the governor on that Honda, but we might as well put him in anyway since we have him. I don't have a spare head gasket for the other engine, so we're gonna have to wait on a head gasket. Head doesn't look bad at all. Head looks savable. We could probably port this and save it and use it for another project. Just hand port it ourselves and see what happens with it. I think for the most part, we've stolen everything that we need off of here, so I'm gonna go ahead and set this to the side for now. We'll start getting our Honda engine pulled off the trike and start getting it ready to go onto the mini bike. Now we can get the Honda engine pulled off of our trike setup here. Set it on the bench and we'll take a look at it. So I wanted to let you guys know that we are working with ievilenergy and we've got a discount code for you guys that you can use at checkout. That code is B2B and you can enter it right at checkout to save some money on your order. Once again, that code is B2B and it'll save you a percentage on anything you order through ievilenergy, and we will have a link in the description of today's video so that you guys can go and check it out. All right guys, so we've got to basically do the same exact things to this. I'm gonna get the exhaust pulled off, the torque converter pulled off. I think I'm going to use the other fuel tank. This one's just kind of ugly. So we'll use the black tank. And then we'll put our exhaust back on here. We're going to take the carburetor off, swap that out. I think I'm going to pull the cylinder head so we can put our valve springs in there and our head gasket just because we already have it, so why not? And then this thing will be just about ready to go ahead and throw it back on the bike. I think we're going to call it right here for the night, guys. I got to get some degreaser tomorrow. I'm out. So we'll get this thing all cleaned up and looking fresh, and then our head gasket should be here, and we should be able to put our valve springs, our thin head gasket, put this thing back together, and get it on the bike. So before we go ahead and pull the cylinder head off, I taped up all the openings, and we're going to hit this thing with some degreaser. I'm just going to use some super clean and some water, get this thing all cleaned up so it looks a little bit better before we put it back together for the mini bike. So let's go ahead and spray this thing down. We'll hit it with a brush, and then we will rinse it off. That thing looks like a whole new engine now. I'm just going to clean up this engine cover and then we'll set it to the side to dry for a while before we tear it down. Now that we got this thing all cleaned up, I let it dry off for a while. We're going to do the same thing that we did with the other engine when we were tearing it down. I'm just going to go ahead, pull the valve cover off, and then we will undo the valve train, get the cylinder head pulled off, clean it up, and then we will finally be ready to start going back together with our new valve springs out of our other engine our thin head gasket, and all the other goodies that we're going to put on this thing before we slap it on the bike. Now that we've got the cylinder head off, I want to go ahead and clean this thing up and lap the valves, but before we do that, we need to get the valves and valve springs out. So they're super simple, especially on these very light sprung engines. You just push down, and then it'll slide over into a notch. If I can get it to go down far enough, just like so, and then it'll come right up and out. So we've got our intake there, and then the exhaust has a valve lash cap on it. I went ahead and took that off and set it to the side, but it's just a little cap that sits in there. I'll show you guys when we put it back together, but I'm gonna do the same thing with this. Just pop it off just like so. That is our exhaust, and then we've got a valve stem seal on the intake side, so I'm going to take that off of here if I can get it out right here. We're going to set that with the intake just like so. Set both of those out of our way for a second, and I'm just going to go ahead and get this cylinder head cleaned up real quick. We'll come back, we will lap the valves, and then we will go ahead and get ready to put this thing back together. So you guys might be wondering why I have blue tape all over everything. I'm in a rush to get this thing back together because we need to get the video out, but I can't help myself. We are going to go ahead and port this thing just a little bit. I want to at least match the gaskets on the inlet and outlet for the exhaust and intake, but we might also do a little bit of port work in here. Not sure yet. We'll see how long it takes us to get moving, but I do want to do a little bit, and we're also going to lap the valves. So I'm going to get set up here, and we're just going to go ahead and take a little bit off of this thing and go from there. So I'm not sure how well you guys can see it, but here on the exhaust side, if I get the gasket going the right way, you guys will see that we have a little bit of material left up here at the top of the D, at the round part of the D. So I'm going to go ahead and start working on taking some of that out. The intake side didn't look bad, so we'll probably just clean that up a little bit, but this one definitely could use a little bit of material taken off. So that's where we're going to start with the Dremel, and the way I like to do it, I take a Sharpie. Now if you guys want, you can go back on the channel. I have videos of porting everything from Turbo Civic cylinder heads to LS stuff to throttle bodies, all kinds of stuff. But I just use a Sharpie and kind of trace out our gasket so we have an idea of where we want to take material off. And then we're just going to go in here and start chipping away at it. So let's grab the sanding wheel and we'll start taking some material off. Keep in mind, if you do this, you are going to have to clean the cylinder head really well before we go back together. So let's go ahead and hit this thing. I apologize if you guys don't have the best angle right now, but I'm just trying to get this done so we can get the video out for you guys. I don't want to go too crazy on any of the edges except for this round part of the D, just because that's where we have the most material to take off. Everything else seems to fit the gasket really well. So I'm just going to clean those edges up a little bit, just like so. And then we're going to focus most of our energy right here at taking this out. So we still got quite a ways to go. So I'm just going to go ahead and keep working it just like you guys seen until this is nice and smooth and we're ready to go. So I just got done porting this thing. Now I got to give it a really good clean. Make sure you clean the absolute crap out of this thing, because now we've got metal all in there. So if you're going to port it, make sure you clean it. Once I clean this thing up, I'll give you guys a closer look at what we did with the ports. And if you guys want to see us port a cylinder head, if you want a step-by-step how-to on porting one of these things, let me know. We have a spare head right here that we could go much more in depth on and really port the crap out of this thing, see how far we can actually push it and try to maximize it. But like I said, today I'm just in a rush trying to get this video out, so we hit it with a quick port. It did come out pretty good actually. I'm super happy with it, but we need to clean this thing up. Another note to mention is never port where you're going to be working on your engine like we did. Again, I'm in a rush and my back's killing me, so I just went ahead and did it, and I'm totally okay with blowing this thing up if we get metal in it. You guys might not be, so just make sure that you don't port it where you're going to be working on an engine or have any open engine parts. Now with that being said, I'm going to go outside real quick and clean the crap out of this thing, try to get it cleaned up, bring it back in, and we can finally lap the valves and throw this thing back together. So we just went ahead and cleaned this thing up. I'm not sure how well you guys are going to be able to see this or how well my phone's going to focus on it, but we just mainly wanted to take off any sharp edges, any non-radiused curves, and it actually came out pretty good for a super quick job. Now, like I said, if you guys want to see a more in-depth version of this, make sure to let me know in the comments. I will do one on a spare head that we have, take our time, and see if we can't max that thing out. But for what it is, I think it came out pretty good. I'll show you guys this side of the port as well. Not sure how well you guys can see it. So on the exhaust side, I ended up going all the way to 600 grit. But on the intake side, I like to leave them a little bit on the rougher side. So like I said, it is far from perfect, but definitely going to be better than what it was. I just wanted to go ahead and hit it quick because we were here. So that's the intake side. Came out pretty decent. I'm happy enough with it. I definitely think it's going to be better than what we had on their factory. So we're going to go ahead, lap the valves, and get this thing thrown back together. All right, guys, now I'm just going to very quickly lap the valves on this thing. You want to make sure not to get any valve grinding compound on the stem. Make sure you got the intake valve for the intake side. And then I've got this little suction cup thing. You can also use a rubber hose on this end of the stem. But usually if the suction cup works, it's easier to do it this way. Especially for how we're just trying to do this quick and easy. But then you just start your little campfire. And you'll hear the tone change as you pick up the valve and turn it a little bit. You'll hear it get gritty again. And then you'll hear it as it gets finer and finer. And that's what you're listening for. Once it gets fine, you're pretty much good to turn it again. And you can just lift up, turn, do it again. So we're going to go just until we have a nice ring around it, and then we're going to be good to put this thing back together. So I'm going to get these things lapped, and then we'll start putting the springs back on. I don't know if you guys can see that, but we have a nice uniform ring right around the valve. If you had any like spotty areas or any spots that didn't look like they were getting contact, you'd want to keep lapping, or that means that your seat is messed up. But in our case, that one looks perfect. Looks nice and crisp all the way around. So we're going to clean it up real good, get all that lapping compound out of there. We'll do the exhaust side, and then this thing's done. Now that I've got the valves lapped, I'm going to go ahead and drop them both in. I cleaned them up really good. Just make sure you don't have any of that lapping compound still in there. Now we're going to flip this over. I'm going to ball up a piece of paper towel to put under it to hold the valves in place. Same way that we took those ones off. You just push down, over. Boom, they come right off. Now we can go ahead and throw our springs on here, our retainers, and then don't forget the lash cap for the exhaust side. We're going to wait a second just to put that on. We're going to grab our intake side spring, our valve seal, and our retainer, just like that. Then we can take our spring, like so. Now we can put our spring retainer on there. Just like so. Alright, we look good to go there. I'm going to throw my valve lash cap on there just so we don't forget. We are good to go. The cylinder head is ready to go back on. So let's grab the block. I'm going to clean the surface up real quick. Double check the surface on this is clean. Then we can put our new head gasket on and start getting our head bolted down. So now that we've got the cylinder head all set up and ready to go, we're going to get ready to slap it on here. Don't forget your dowel pins. We're going to go ahead and get those thrown in now. And then of course we're going to need our head gasket. I like using the 10 thousandths, the super thin one from OMB Warehouse. They've been really good. I've used them a few times and they're super cheap, so I like them. I've picked up a few of them right here, and we're going to go ahead and get this thrown on. So go ahead just like so. Let's go ahead and grab our cylinder head, and we're going to get that thing slapped on. Just like so. Go ahead and get a couple bolts started. And then we'll get this thing torqued down. I believe they're 18 foot-pounds, so I'm going to go 10 foot-pounds. And then we will go back over it at 18 foot-pounds. And I always do them in a crisscross pattern. Alright, now we can start throwing the rest of this thing back together. Now I'm going to go ahead and throw all of our valve train back in. Just making sure that we keep everything nice and clean. So we'll go ahead and throw the intake one in. And you can feel when they go into the little lifters. Let's go ahead and get our rockers installed. And now we can go ahead and set the valve lash. Very controversial topic. I think factory is 6 thousandths intake and 8 thousandths exhaust. I've set them as tight as 3 thousandths. So we'll go ahead and get our intake set real quick using this feeler gauge. Alright, so that one's pretty good. Got that one set at 3. Now we're going to go to the exhaust side and get that one set. Alright, we've got this thing set. Let's go ahead and throw the valve cover back on. So we can go ahead and throw our new valve cover gasket on here. Valve cover's on. I'm going to go ahead and throw a spark plug in it real quick. I know this engine has an oil pressure sensor, and I know that it's tied to the kill switch. I didn't forget about it. I'm sure some of you guys have been screaming at your phone. I didn't forget it's there. I just don't know what I want to do with it yet. I might do some testing with it and leave it for now, but that's easy to delete later. So for now, I'm just going to keep on plugging away at getting this engine buttoned up so that we can get it on the bike and get it running. Now we can throw this side cover back on. Now that we've got the side cover going on, we can start figuring out our fuel tank situation and also start getting our carburetor and all of that stuff ran. I am using the pieces off of the Coleman bike, off the Coleman engine, because that is what we're going to be using for the intake. And the carburetor, I stole the carburetor off it. Not even going to lie, guys, I had this backwards at first. So we'll go ahead and get this put back on here. Carburetor can go on. Boom. Alright, now we can get this tightened up. Now that we've got the carburetor back in place, we can get our throttle linkage hooked back up and then get ready to throw the fuel tank on. Now I'm going to go ahead and get our linkage hooked back up. I'm sure you guys are probably can't see much, but take a picture of yours before you take it apart. That's what I always do. And then it's easier to remember how it needs to go back together. So that goes just like that. I'm going to go ahead and throw the fuel tank on here real quick. I was going to use the white tank just to stick with the red and white theme of the Honda, but the white tank's really rusty and just beat up and nasty, so I'm going to go ahead and use the black tank off of the mini bike, as long as it'll work for us. So I'm going to go ahead and see if this thing will bolt up. I don't see why it shouldn't. These things are clones, so it should drop right into place. Alright guys, now that we got the engine all back together, it is finally time to go ahead and throw the torque converter on here. So I'm going to grab the bolts for that. We'll get the torque converter mocked up, and then we can bring this thing over to the bike and test fit it. I'm going to put this spacer on and the washer. Then we can put this plate on with the little brass bushing. It is nice with this engine that we're using now, the Honda engine. We don't need to run an adapter like we did with the old engine, so that'll be really nice. Go ahead and put that on there. Take this one. Get this on here. Just like so. Keyed washer in there, our bolt, boom. This thing is ready to go on the bike and get fired up and tested. So we're finally about ready to throw this thing onto the mini bike, but I did decide we're gonna go ahead and just disconnect the oil pressure switch anyways. I don't feel like dealing with it later. So we're just gonna unplug that there, unplug this here, grab our impact, and get this out of here, set this aside. And I'm pretty confident that even with these disconnected, the kill switch will still work. Now for this kill switch to work, it would have to be in here, but once we get over to the bike, I'm going to go ahead and cut this wire, and it's going to go up to the kill switch on the handlebar, and then we'll have the ground wire going to the block, and then this going to the other side of that switch, so the kill switch on the handlebar should still function. So we're going to leave this for now, but we can go ahead and get that out of here, and we are ready to set this thing onto the bike. Alright, we've got the engine set on there. Let's go ahead and get everything tightened down. So as you can see, we got the engine on here. Now we just need to throw the exhaust on. I'm going to have to loosen the chain just a little bit. It's a little tight with this setup. Alright, let's get the exhaust started on this thing. Now we can go ahead and get our air filter thrown on here. So I've got this thing to a point where we should be good to fire it up. We have the kill switch wired up. I do have the chain off and the belt cover off, but I did hook up the throttle and I threw some fuel in it. So I'm gonna put the kill switch to run. We'll give it a pull and see if this thing fires up. Kill switch works, so that's a good sign. So as you guys seen, we got this thing fired up and it actually ran really good. Once the carburetor filled with fuel, this thing was running super smooth. Now there was some rattling going on. A lot of it was this plastic tank, and then some of it was also the ratcheting mechanisms for the ratchet straps that are holding this onto the lift were up against the fenders and rattling away. So once I got all that stuff isolated, this thing was quiet as could be and sounded really healthy. Now there are a couple little things that we need to finish up. We need to get a chain on it and the belt cover on it, but those are super easy to do and they'll be done in no time. Now sadly, I'm not going to be able to take this thing for a ride tonight for a couple reasons. Reason number one, my back has been absolutely killing me for the last 3 or 4 days, and it's just starting to feel a little bit better today, and I really don't want to risk it by hopping on this mini bike and going backwards a couple days. Now the other reason is because it's already dark outside, and even if I slapped a camera on and went and put this thing around, without a headlight, you guys aren't going to be able to see anything. So sadly, we're not going to be able to take it for a ride today. But keep an eye out for some upcoming videos and an upcoming YouTube short. I will make sure to put one out once my back's feeling better of us ripping this thing around so you guys can see how it runs. Now the other thing is, keep an eye out for a YouTube poll. I'm going to do that under the community tab on YouTube so that you guys can give me some input on what you think we should do with one of these things. Also, let me know down in the comments below today's video what you guys think we should do with one of these, whether you want to see us do a billet rod, billet flywheel, make a little turbo kit, whatever you guys want to see, let me know in the comments below. If enough people want to see it, we'll go ahead and make that happen. So as always, I appreciate you guys for checking out the channel. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, ring that bell, and check us out on all of our other social media platforms, Facebook, TikTok, and Bought to Build Official on Instagram. And we will catch you on the next one.